Okay, Richard Dory.
Pleasant, present, and pleasant.
Sometimes.
Aaron Chase. Donald Mattice,
Present.
Jim King. I think that this is Jim.
Is it Aaron?
Aaron's here.
You there, Jim?
Yeah, this is Jim. I'm
Present.
the 5761 number.
Jamie Wolf. Here. Gregory Stewart,
Present.
Betty Harris Howard.
Here.
Wow,
Everybody?
that's everybody.
Okay, next item on.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I
That's
didn't have.
okay.
Apologize, I don't know why I don't have you on here. Fred McCarthy.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Very welcome tonight.
It's Aaron present.
I did, yeah. Well, I got it here.
Aaron's sitting like a 10-year-old.
Yes. Okay, next review of the minutes, August 14th. Any errors or omissions? Good to me. If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept that.
I make a motion, we accept the
Don, make a motion.
minutes from August 14th.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor? Vote. Next, August 28th. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none. Motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of August 28th.
Second.
I'll second.
On seconds. Discussion. All in favor?
I was not at the meeting, so I'm going to abstain from a vote to accept the meeting minutes. That's okay.
Don't know. All in favor? Opposed? Next item is 169 Goose Cove Lane. Presenter. Go ahead. No.
I'm Harris Smith, my wife Ginger, and we have owned a camp on Blue Cove Lane since.
Don raised, excuse me, Don's raising.
Want to pause for a second because this is what people are seeing at home as opposed to what's the cameras are showing. I just want to take one moment and seem to have a problem with this at every meeting. I apologize.
Go back
I
to
don't-
the video, Don, will just change the camera. You had it, go back to the video, upload.
All right, wait a minute. You said,
Yeah, go to video, lower left,
yeah,
hit that up arrow, not the up and down, that, yep, and then go up and hit the HP, yep. And then if that doesn't change, go back and try it again, now switch back to the camera you want. Sometimes just switching cameras will, the video.
yeah. I know they had trouble with it at the council meeting, but it was working earlier today. It's fine in house and it'll still be recorded the sound. It's just that for those that are watching, it's,
They can't see what.
yeah, they can see. Well, I can share a screen. I believe I can still do that, but they can't see what the cameras are seeing.
That's. Why the freaking stuff? She didn't actually get in.
Hold on.
I don't need to know where the camera comes out of, so I can't help you.
It's way better.
Oh, I see it now. Okay, I see. All of our new sites.
No,
Oh,
something.
well, they wanna see us, they could.
I was just gonna say the PNC,
They could click direct.
All set. So as I mentioned, we bought our camp in the 1980s. Every 3 or 4 years since then, I've had to crawl under the camp, jack it up, because we've discovered it's slowly sliding down the slope towards the lake. And we've also decided that our natural could do that. So we looked at a number of alternatives, and the one that I think works the best for us, and the one that folks stop the camp from sliding the best, would be put a full foundation under it. And that's what we're here to talk about. The camp is 32 feet long, 20 feet wide, with a 12 pitched roof. So there's a first floor and like a split, 2 rooms upstairs, it's like sleeping lots. So our proposal is to jack the camp straight up, enough so that they can get an excavator under it to dig foundation hole, and pour a 8-inch foundation on 3 sides and around the corners, and then we'll somewhat of a daylight basement on the left side. So when we, right now, the highest point of the camp from the ground is 21.7 feet up. After we're done, it'll be 2 feet higher. And if you use the state requirement that you have to measure from the median low point of the ground up to the top of the roof, it is 24.3 feet if we raise it 4 inches, just under the 25 limit. We can control how high we build the foundation, so if it looks like we're going to exceed that 25-foot limit, we'll just take the whole deeper, I guess. There's one oak tree with a DBN 19.7 inches. It's a good sized tree. It's about 5 feet from the lake edge of the camp. And the contractor that's going to do the work said when they excavate that, they'll probably kill all the roots on the house side. She says we'll kill the tree and definitely we didn't. So we've asked permission to cut that tree down, and we're perfectly willing to put another one somewhere else. The camp itself will be in the exact same place it is today. We're not moving it. The contractor we hired is certified by the Maine DEP to work on shorelines. Any dirt that isn't used to backfill the foundation, we own a lot across the road, and there's 2 deep holes. So the plan is whatever's left over will fill in those holes. Between the camp and the road is a relatively modern septic system. It's a little different, and there's a flat area where the camp is, and that's where the septic tank itself is. And then the front yard, the rest of the front yard is 3 feet, maybe higher than that, so it's pumped up into the leach field, which pretty much fills the entire front yard. We use the camp seasonally, and we tend to keep doing it. We're not turning into a year-round house. So weather permitting, sorry, I'm having trouble with these glasses reading. Weather permitting, the plan is to pour the foundation in January. We'll build until the ground freezes, they'll backfill the foundation as much as they can. Final grading will have to wait until spring. One of the problems is if we can't do it this January, we have to wait almost a year because the contractor is fully booked until November, December of 25. So there's one other issue we asked for, unrelated to jacking the camp up. So for years we had a screen house, and originally it was between the camp and the lake. You're only 2 feet away from camp. It was seasonal. The platform was there year round, but we took the screen house up and down seasonally. 2004, we bought the land across the street. They split it up among all the camp owners, and we also bought an empty lot between us and the next cabin. So we asked him to move the screen house platform to that empty lot. And the CEO said, sure, and he moved it. Shortly thereafter, a poplar tree fell down and crushed it. That lot is a lot of poplar trees on it. So we repaired it and same thing happened again. So we decided that isn't a real good place for a screen house platform. So what we'd like to do is move it back to its original location. The platform stays in place year round. We built it like a deck with gaps, so it's semi-permeable, I guess. The screen house would be coming out seasonal. Maybe it's too. Yeah. It's a simple project.
I'd just like to know for the board that both of the applicants this evening have seen the draft findings. So they're aware that there's some just suggested conditions of approval and that there was some information that was flagged that needed to be submitted or amended. Height of the structure in this instance being one.
The platform we talking about, was that indicated by the little square?
Yes, that's its original location.
That's where it is right now.
No, it's gone right now.
Okay, that's where you propose to put.
Where the lot beside it, about where our name is where we moved it to.
Right.
There's reference to a, thank you for your presentation. There's reference to a, orange perimeter drain that would be installed around the footings for the new foundation, and it would be connected to a positive drain. I'm trying to understand what that is, where that daylights to.
Positive drain simply means it's self-draining. So it will drain probably down on the lakeside. What we did when we built the garage, you can see it's all, some drainage stitches are all stuck on it. We did something similar, I guess. The lake, a couple of years ago, we did get DEP permission to riprap the shoreline, so it's somewhat protected.
The new foundation, you'll backfill that. There won't be any living space or anything under the camp. Will it be a crawl space or?
You know, our hope is to get a fully foundation in. We're concerned because the lots down there are full of big boulders. What other people have done when they run into one like these little, basically they've literally put the foundation around it. It's deep enough that works. If it's shallow enough, I would want to rethink it because if that rock moves, it's going to break the foundation.
Right.
We won't know the answer to that until we ask it.
But it's not gonna be living.
It's not gonna be living space. We'll use it for storage. I'm sure the grandchildren will hang out down there, stuff like that. No intent to put a bedroom or anything like that down.
And will you be able to supply some of the information that was noted in the draft
Yes.
findings of fact?
Like I talked to Dawn, the only one I'm a little nervous about, it's just because I've never seen one, is the plan you have to file with the registry of deeds. If somebody could give me a copy of one, then I will file one for this project. I don't know how to do a plan when you're looking at building on.
So we did discuss this earlier. That was actually, it was put in flagged as a condition, suggested condition of approval because it's in the ordinance. And I don't know if people, applicants are aware of that when they get their decision and they go on their way with the project. So I called it out specifically. And I believe it's from the state shoreline requirements, but it is in our local ordinance. And I'm happy to assist the applicant with what would be recorded. And I suspect it's going to be whatever plan you all approve. And then we'd have to have the chair sign it and then they would take that to the registry. But I haven't been involved in this process regarding this yet. I have reported plans at the registry, so I'm happy to work with them to whatever extent and get that done.
That's my question for the time being as I'm going through my notes here. Right?
Yeah, you mentioned the existing structure is 21 feet, something height.
The building itself
Yeah.
is 20 by 32.
No, the height.
Well, the height is, the building itself, the height is 18.4 feet.
Okay, I thought you, when you mentioned the 20, yeah. Okay. I guess, and it looks like this is entirely within a 75-foot zone from the lake. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the ordinance says that has to be 20 feet.
The one I read said 25.
The table?
It wasn't a table, it was actually in the description. There's a section of the ordinance about foundations in. And that section, I think it said it was 25.
You have that there, Don?
I apologize. I know we talked about this earlier. I'm looking right now in the non-conforming section. You are correct.
I've got.
Let's see, that's Article 2, 9, non-conforming, and then C is non-conforming structures. And then it says that, for structures located less than 75 feet from the normal high water line, a maximum height may not be greater than 20 feet or the height of the existing structure, whichever is greater. And do we have the height of the existing structure? We talked about that briefly on the
Yeah.
phone.
18 feet.
Oh, okay.
The building itself is 8. So it's probably close to 20 feet. Where you measure it from a lower point.
Yeah.
But with the foundation will it be,
It won't go over 25.
No, but I think it's only going to be able to go to 20.
Dawn and I both found that section and said 25. She was the one who referenced 25 to me. Well, I didn't bring them.
We're on page 8 of the ordinance. We're in section C, non-conforming structures, 1 expansion, section D, section I,
Section just-
page H, the 4th one down. Structures located less than 75 feet from the normal high water line. And edge of the water stream, it says. Not made greater than 20 feet or the height of the existing structure, whichever is greater.
Yeah. I noticed on the drawing, it talked about encroachments. What is that? Showed some encroachments. Is that on? Over
Over
the-
the encroachment now on our part. Part of that 10-foot piece that we bought when we bought the land across the street,
Yeah.
our neighbor has a, part of their driveway is on that 10 feet, technically is ours. Doesn't bother us.
Oh, okay, the encroachment is from somebody else.
It wasn't overdrawing. Additional land on
Right.
it, and that showed the first, what I understand you're saying is that we bought that property, the original,
Oh, got it.
but originally it was, right? Before you bought the additional property.
Yes.
It was on the right of way side,
Yeah.
the upper side of this map, which where the road was.
I was a little confused on this one drawing that you had here. Shows the house, it shows the encroachments. Are you saying this? Or that encroachment, not the driveway, but the other encroachment, you bought that land next to you?
Yes.
Okay,
Come on, if you look at the new map,
yeah.
he showed where he bought that lot, and corrected that.
So impervious area wise, you should be all right. Have you calculated that?
I have a calculator yet. One question I had is the road. I think technically we own the road, right? Will that as part of the impervious area or not?
You said the road, you're talking about the road up here,
Yeah, the
where the
Boot Cove,
driveways and stuff.
Boot Cove Lane itself.
Did you actually merge the 2 properties? Or did you
Town-
have 1 parcel? I know the town may send you 1 tax bill, but it's actually 1 parcel or
Yes.
is 2 parcels?
My understanding is one parcel. If you look on the tax map, it's a slashed line that goes across the road, so I assume that's what that means.
So
probably still considered a right of way.
No, well, it isn't, because the right of way was where we're on the property across the street, so the right of way is for us. Since we bought that property. When they did the original They sold all the lots on the lake first, and they didn't sell any of the land across the street. When the original owner died, his daughter decided to split it up, and what she wanted to do is everybody who had a camp buy the land across the street. Most of us did that, there was a few that didn't. And they all had right of ways to get out of the lake. So what we were told is when we bought the property, since we were the people that had the right of way now, in essence became our problem.
So the grid is actually on.
Yeah, it's not an open right of way, it was always a right of way for whoever owned the property across the.
If you look at this drawing, your line would extend over and connect. The shoreline, shore property would come over and connect those points,
Yes,
and you would own that property in between.
So you're saying all of this is one lot?
yes,
Okay, so your impervious area would have to be calculated on that whole
yeah.
lot.
And
And
so
that
it's
road
one
would be
lot.
part of it, right?
Hmm?
And the road would be part of that.
Road would be part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Impervious, how you calculate it.
I don't think it's a problem because that lot across the road goes 500 feet up.
Well, it's probably not a problem, but based on some things that have happened recently, I would like to see that calculated
Yeah,
in the
it was
proposal.
on the list of things that don't.
Yeah,
say.
oh, that was on your list, okay.
We're well along answering that list, so.
You're gonna plant a new tree. Looks like there's quite a few trees, in it, isn't there?
It's much more wooded than most of the lots.
Yeah, yeah, so it might, I was thinking it'd be nice to plant it where it's gonna do the best benefit for the lake, but may not be enough room there to plant a
As long
tree.
as you don't tell me to plant another poplar tree. I mean,
No. Now, I thought I saw something in there about flood elevation,
What,
flood. Are you in the flood zone?
we probably are, but I don't. The lake is quite a bit lower than I. We've been there since the 80s and never seen it come over even onto the shoreline.
Yeah.
Yeah, your base flood elevation is 176 feet. I got the flood map.
So they're okay,
No, they're not.
they're not.
Yeah, especially adding a foundation. They're not.
Well, that was gonna be my question here,
That's,
but
yes,
it looks like now that hole will have to go deeper.
yeah. Well, no, it can't go deeper. So when you add a foundation, you're now lowest adjacent grade is now that foundation. So now they're well below the flood elevation.
What I'm saying is to meet the 20 feet.
Yeah, that's,
You're saying it needs to go down, and I'm saying it can't go down because the flood elevation, you
Right.
cannot, you have to be 1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation. They're gonna be required, that was one of the things I was gonna add is they're gonna be required before we could approve that is they need a elevation certificate. To say that they are 1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation, the first floor, meaning the first floor. You know, their lowest adjacent grade, so the dirt going up to the foundation has to be within that floodplain, within that 1 foot surcharge of the floodplain.
So the bottom of the new
The bottom of the new
foundation has to be a foot above.
Right, so if they want a full access door, that means the bottom of that foundation has to be 1 foot above that 176, which I don't believe it is. It's hard to tell, it's fairly steep there, so they need an elevation certificate, that's
Yeah.
what you need as a surveyor, so.
Well, that's
I
it.
know both I and the contractor looked at. That's one reason we thought we'd have to raise the house up 2 feet is the bottom of the foundation would basically have to be at the current lower side level of the land, or just a little below it.
But you understand what Rick's saying.
Yep.
I think that's it for now.
Did you?
I'm almost not.
Okay.
So I did see, Dawn, did you make this move camp back? This note?
Is it a handwritten note?
Yeah,
That was based on a discussion I had earlier with Rick. So that was notes that I made to myself based on a conversation.
because see how they could with the septic tank for each field without completely having to move that, and plus the property really doesn't. You'd have to excavate in that whole little ledge there.
You basically have to move the leach field across the roads.
Yeah. Or
Actually,
the
we-
camp across the road, but then there's the garage there, so.
Yeah, it's one lot, I guess.
And that's all very steep.
Well, there's another issue, and that is when we put that. Most of the people down there are doing that, they're moving their leach fields across the road. But our neighbor put a well in the way, so we couldn't do it.
Yeah, I have a few more on top of Dawn's. First thing is, you know, we have the floodplain issue. That was probably the biggest one. That we need to address, and that faces both of those. The platform, the tent platform itself is technically a structure. We can't add a structure that's been, once it's removed, it can't be added back in the floodplain. So that can't be added unless it's elevated above the 100-year floodplain. But I'm not sure how our grandfathering works. Once that structure is completely removed, I don't think we can let you add it back in. I don't believe we're allowed to. I don't remember reading anything. Somebody on the board or somebody else can correct me, but I don't remember reading anything about grandfathering. Once it's been removed and remediated, that's it. You can't put it back in within that 100-foot setback.
And the only reason we removed it is it was gonna be in the way of the construction, so I'm getting ready for that.
So it only disappeared here recently?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, well, I think you got,
It
you
could
got,
move really, really fast.
Yeah,
you got 2 years to redo
Yeah,
it, I think.
yeah, I think there's some note about 2 years, I know for businesses, things like that, so. Okay, I thought you moved it, I thought you moved it years ago.
We moved it a long time ago, but anyway, removed it about 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, so as far as the floodplain, you're gonna need to get an elevation certificate to validate that whatever elevation you build this at, it's gonna meet the 100-year flood elevation according to state guidance. You're gonna need a professional land surveyor to get that elevation certificate. So just letting you know that, and we're gonna need that in order to approve the project, because we can't allow you to build within the floodplain. And because you're digging a hole and making all these changes, that's gonna be required. So my second question was about the foundation itself is, you know, and you, especially since you mentioned you're digging in January, and then they're talking, you know, if they can't get it in, it's gonna be waiting for another January. So I really would like to have some kind of a rough idea of what that contractor is gonna do for material storage. You know, they're gonna excavate the hole, they're gonna remove that off-site. I'm assuming they'll remediate that fine, but they're gonna have material storage for gravel, backfill for the footer, things like that. Where's that going to be? How's that gonna be contained? If a pile of gravel sits right down next to the lake for a year, that's obviously a little scary for us, where you're gonna get all that phosphorus, all that runoff coming off that pile of gravel. So we have to silt fence it off. Most of them are pretty good. It's just nice to have that kind of in the construction plan.
Yeah, like, the way I understood it is, if they won't bring anything on site until they start construction. The only reason they couldn't start construction was the ground, the frost is too deep, they can't break through. Pouring cement in the winter isn't a problem anymore. As far as gravel, there's no way to get it down to the lakeside, so they're gonna probably have to store it across the, there's plenty of room over there.
Okay. Yeah, that's just, I mean, usually they have a material stockpile, they'll
Right.
off a couple dump wells, just knowing where that is. And that they've protected that from getting washed into the lake. So that's more of a construction practice.
Yeah.
You know, my last question was the drain, you know, I got confused by the positive drain and how they were gonna let that out. If they're digging a big enough hole, are they gonna let that drain? You know, we can't allow you to run a pipe right down to the river and say, hey, it's going right out at the shore. Right, so we have to have a better understanding of how they're gonna run that drain. Ideally, they'll put some kind of a settling swale, where they basically daylight it as close to the building as possible. Put a swale in to contain that with vegetation, things like that, so that water will go into the ground. Ground will act as a filter before it travels to the lake, so there's no direct runoff from that drainage in and around the building.
That's what we did across the way, so if you want to do that.
Okay, so it'd be good to have some kind of semblance of what that plan is, you know, show where they're gonna daylight it. You've got some slopes, you've got some elevation, so I don't think it's too hard to probably just sketch that in.
Okay, looking at your plans, I'm looking at this one. Looking at this one, here's, questions about the drainage field, the leach field and the septic tank. I assume distribution for the drainage field is on the end foot driveway,
Well, it's on the,
it's
well,
on the opposite end.
The distribution box is right above where the boulders. You can't really see what's in the plan, but there's a whole row of boulders between the driveway and the leach field is. Septic tank is between the camp and that row of boulders. And it's pumped up into the leach field, and the distribution box is on the driveway side, and then, all the path holes and everything else go across the front yard.
Okay, so the distribution is for the driveway then, from the septic tank?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it goes into a box that splits into 3 long
Yeah,
tanks.
you got to put the picture in there showing that
Yeah.
drainage field installed, it looked to me like the butt end of the district, not the district, the end away from the distribution is toward the property line,
Yeah.
which is where the rocks are shown on this drawing.
Those are different rocks. Those are just, those rocks is ditches along the road. And that's just to go up, drain down, open up before they hit the lake.
So I guess what I looked at was the feasibility of moving the septic tank up close to the distribution and moving your can foundation, the new one, basically where that line is, looking at different drawing, but this drawing, the line goes through the septic tank. And, my question is about the feasibility of moving that septic tank away from that line and putting your can up near that line, which facilitates getting it away from the water. It allows you to put the foundation and then put the can on
Yeah.
it. And that can help with trust, I don't know.
No, it actually makes it a lot more complicated.
I understand you're picking up both of it,
Right.
but one of the goals we have is this kind of, change. Is to get it more conforming. You do have a 15-foot non-conforming line in one corner to your property line.
Not anymore.
This drawing doesn't show it shows 15 feet,
Can I go over and look at it?
and that shows the new property, or the additional property.
What's the non-conforming?
This is the property you added, right? And so this is showing 15 feet non-conforming to that, and it should be 20
Oh,
foot.
non-conforming setback?
Yeah,
It's actually bigger than it used to be, but it is non-conforming.
yeah. So I guess the point I'm making was that would fix it non-conforming corner. It would get you further from the lake process.
Would that help with the floodplain?
It probably would, but right now it feels like you're stuck in the middle where you have a flood elevation here and you can't go below that. You have a 20-foot plus ceiling. And at the given location, you're kind of squished in the middle. So moving it back would alleviate that problem.
Yeah, I've looked at that after somebody brought that up, and I don't see where you could possibly move the septic tank to have it work. It's gotta be within 20 feet of the can. And it's gotta be below the can. And it's pumped up into the leach field. There's a whole row of big boulders. Right, literally, the back of the septic tank is right against. And then it raises up 2 feet, so you would be below the can.
So you could look at pumping from the septic tank or
We have pumped it.
from the septic tank up to the drainage field.
Yep,
So that's why in the picture it shows the septic tank and a lift station.
Yep.
They're side by side.
they're actually part of the same tank.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Modern tanks, they do that.
But, that was the question I had, Greg, was, does it help with the elevation part from the floodplain by doing what you're saying, the restriction with boulders between the septic tank and pump and the drainage field?
Right.
So you basically, you're getting a line worked up through the distribution area from the pump. You're, well, yeah, I mentioned all that because of one of our goals with the foundation is to relocate.
Yep, I saw that in the zoning. Rules, that if there's a way to move it, it's supposed to move it.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question. If the height restriction is 20 feet and not the 25 that I thought. How do we deal with that? Because the existing building is over 20 feet.
And then that's your limit. So if the existing building is 22 feet, measured the way you're supposed to measure it, you're capped at 22 feet. You can rebuild or you can repair or whatever you need to do at the same elevation. That doesn't change your flood elevation problem, but it does change your building height. If you're at 22 feet, you're allowed to stay at 20. So, because you're not increasing the non-conformity.
But you said you're at 18.4 feet.
18.4 is the actual building, but the lower part of the building is 4 or 5 feet off the ground.
He has a plot on one of the pages there
Yeah.
that shows the existing. Yeah, that one that shows the.
Yeah.
It shows the offsets in the building heights of that, so. I think it's 37 or something like that.
So how do you solve the floodplain dispute? Yeah, well, I understand that. What we're saying is the top of the slab of one side of the building is gonna be a foot above. Let's say it was a slab. You
Yeah.
put a slab a foot above.
What about the BFE?
Yeah. So there is no foundation.
Right.
So how can I find what the floodplain, I couldn't find found the floodplain, but I couldn't find what the highest flood was. Where can I find
You
that?
don't need the highest flood, you need the floodplain. So you need the actual base flood elevation, which is, I printed it off, so if you go to FEMA's Map Service Center, MSC.
Yep.
You go right there, type in your street address, your house pops, your place pops right up. And then you'll say other products, they're all right there, the report's there. So I read the BFE, which is rounded to the nearest foot of 176. They'll actually have a full description of the lake, and it might be 175.5, and they rounded to 176, or it might be 176.5. You need to have your elevation certificate by your surveyor, will validate, this is on the panel, I won't read you the panel, but it prints it on the map. You need that panel, they've looked at your property, they've got your lowest adjacent grade, you've got your first floor elevation, you've got your base flood elevation. They do these all the time, so they're very familiar with exactly what you need. And I hate to put a burden on a homeowner, but it's really the only way we can be sure of what that elevation is and what this property is. And a lot of times it is pretty steep there based on the topo, so you may have the elevation to go down. I just, you don't know, because the mapping's pretty coarse, so you don't know, it's that elevation that matters, it's not the mapping.
Once you know that, it's foot above that, there you go to build and see what.
Then you know what your options are.
What your options are at that point.
Once you know what your real elevation is, then you'll know what your options are.
Our options are put in a 6-foot foundation, for example, instead of an 8. Put in a frost wall, something like that.
Right, that's where you can play the game with the height.
Yeah. We talked about putting in the frost wall, the contractor didn't think that would stop the camp from moving enough, he didn't think there was enough weight.
Really?
Yeah.
Thin it,
In,
yeah. Yeah, all you gotta do is when they're digging it, if they run into those boulders, you're looking for them. Otherwise, they put construction pins, which is basically corrugated metal. You drive them in as deep as you can, and they'll stop anything from moving. So, I mean, it's obviously a lot more expensive, and I'm not even sure you can get a rig in there to pound it, especially if you're elevated camp. How would you get it underneath? It might be hard. I'm not saying it's not a complicated thing. I'm just saying it can be done. There are other options.
So where do we go from here? Do I figure out the floodplain and come back to,
It sounds, jump in there, but it sounds to me like you need to get that elevation, determine whether it is relative to your building, where you want to put it. What kind of foundation you need to put in to satisfy that to be a foot above, and still meet your height criteria. And obviously a decent design that doesn't float on it or doesn't move on. So that's kind of where you're at. And you may find all said and done, there's a better slab, you put that slab, if indeed there is a slab, with a cross.
well, do you sort of put the whole thing on hold and we come back? That's my question.
That's where we're at.
Okay.
It usually has to be applicant, right? I mean, he could say if he wants us to vote on it, and we could vote on this. But I think we've identified, and you've already been working on the list of Don's comments, and now we've given you a few more.
I don't have a problem. I do have a question, One of the things, Dawn, the last thing on your list, Dawn, said something about It confused me whether we had to start within a year or we had to be finished within a year.
Substantial start, we'll start within a year.
Because my concern is if this delays us in the next year. Let's say we resolve all this, you approve it, and then I gotta wait a year before I can get a contract, is that gonna? be a problem?
You could come back and renew it.
Well, the question about the permit, how long?
Yeah.
You have to do it.
You can do the permit, you don't have to go through all this.
Okay.
I mean, go to Mark, I guess.
Any other questions for us?
No, thank you.
Do you wish to vote on
If there's a risk you're not approving it, no.
Well, we gotta protect this first, right?
And, next move for us would be to accept that the application is complete. I don't hear that.
Without the elevations to get, I don't think we can, it doesn't meet number 8 of our required. Requirements.
One of our steps before approval is to indicate both that the application is complete. There's enough, just that one, Greg has mentioned, is enough to say it's not complete.
So I don't know your process. Can you cable something or is that?
That's essentially what we're gonna do, yeah.
Okay,
If I may, if you just want to pick, there's a meeting 2 weeks out, you could table it to then or the meeting after that. And it really, that's,
We can table it until the applicant can get the information that we need, because I don't wanna table it and then miss, they're not ready. You know,
Mhm.
can we just table it until they let you know that they've got all the answers and they're well ready to come back?
Yeah, if you table, it's just a noticing question on my end. So if you table it indefinitely, when they're ready, they'll come back and we'll renotice it.
Our next meeting is the 10th.
Yeah, it seems a little short probably for them.
Yeah,
You get it done before then. Jim, that'll work.
okay. Not sure I'd get a survey.
And so Don, you're gonna give us everything in writing what we need?
Yeah, I can reach out to you tomorrow and we'll go over what happened tonight and what documentation will need to be submitted. Mhm. Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
I'll entertain motion to table.
I would make a motion that, we don't have a case, the application for 196 Boot Cove Lane, map 22, lot 007, would be, tabled until the applicant is able to provide us with the flood insurance, elevation certificate and the other, questions that Dawn laid out in her, what do we call that, conditional use permit draft finding of facts, Dawn.
And certainly it was a change in the drawings, so whenever you come up with solutions, obviously we entertain that presentation. So, very good. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Other discussion? All in favor? Okay. Is Jim on?
He was. Okay.
No, so. I apologize, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in which case Brent would need to vote in Jim's place.
Okay. So we table it? No schedule? I'm gonna work.
Anything else? I think you have to be.
Thank you. Now move on to 312 Winter Canal Road. State Young Men's Christian Association thing. Conditional use permit. Thank you, folks. Your present. Would you pick yourself, please?
Just tell me when you want me to scroll or what have you.
My name is Patrick Kingsford. I'm an architect. I live here in Winthrop at 37 Mace Avenue. Representing and working with YMCA Camp of Maine. And Jeff Gleason is the executive director of Lucy with Chris Snyder. So the photo you see there, if the storm of, can you go ahead and go away to the. So you can see it after December 19th.
If you want to drive, whatever's,
Okay.
okay.
December 19th, the building became a little different. I didn't click the next one. Oops. Let's go back and I'll let you scroll. During the December 18th storm, a logging company actually had to come in and take care of things. Three buildings were completely lost. Already designed a pump house for them. This is Lakeside Lodge. Lakeside Lodge is for the camp director every summer and his family. It also, its location is also important because the fire road there, and it kind of creates a security point for one camp.
Get out of it somehow. Sorry about that, Patrick.
Scroll there. So we are our district rural with shore overlay for Zolligan. So this is an aerial. The white dash lines are approximate. We've got a survey. We'll show you next, and you can kind of see where the project area is. This is a large piece of property for campus. Next up, next. So again, there's the location of the site that we're looking at. How many acres? 250. 250 acres. Okay, the next one, thank you. So this is sort of an enlargement of that corner of the survey. And we'll scroll up again and I'll show you the detail here, which is the important bit right there. So we're replacing a one-story building that was on about 4-foot piles with a one-story building with, we'll call it a basement right now. The building, when we show you, the roof slopes towards away from the lake. I'm showing you the silt location. And the other thing here is we're going to use a trench drain and a rain swale, a bioswale or a rain garden as our stormwater control. Next. So I show you this slide. So on the left is the existing, when the building was still there, where the building was located. The right side of the slide is, you can see where we're locating the building. So we're locating the front of the building where the front of the existing building was. So we're not enlarging the non-conforming part of the building. Thanks. So I'm trying to set some of the code for you. So because the building was completely damaged, well more than 50%. We can construct or replace the permit, and provided that the permit is obtained with 18 months of the date of the said damage. So over here trying to keep this low. I show you this. So the maximum footprint that we can increase is 30%. And I go through the calculations here. The existing building was 687.5 square feet. With our allowance, we're actually below what we're allowed. We're only doing 864 square feet. And I'm actually reducing the amount of the deck that was on the building. That includes the little front porch. So you may have seen this detail before, maybe not, when I was here for my neighbor's carriage house. But this is the silt fest detail that we did. It meets the requirements of the code. The code isn't clear on, it just states we have to do stormwater management. This is a technique that I've used for decades. It's actually developed for a very densely populated first ring suburb back in Ohio. You size the length of it based on the amount of additional area that you're creating. So we calculated the amount of new non-pervious area and providing for the storm management of that. And that will go, if we go back, it'll collect, some of that water will the pipes perforated will go to the ground at the trench. What's left will go out to the bioswale. The bioswale is going to be planned with the Coffee latest. Friends of the Coffee, they're gonna help select plant materials that will help. So I don't know how much of this is done in maintenance, this is all fairly contemporary. New ideas of doing bioswales and everything for commercial. Excellent. So this is our lower level. The lower level is basically a place so they can store their kayak securely. It's not a living space. It's just a place to store water boards and things like this. There's no motorized vehicles in there. And then above that is the dwelling unit. I can see it's just 2 bedrooms. Building is 16 foot by 54 foot. So the elevations, a little detail there. The elevation side include, I'm assuming about 2 foot, it will be above grade here. To make the grade work. Be 11 foot 9 1/4 on the low side. And the high side, so a little more. 21 6 1/4. Go to the next slide, you can see some side elevations there and what we're doing, so we're elevating the building. That roof slopes away from the lake, so we can collect it in that trench drain, and then whatever goes through gets caught with the bioswale. Materials are wood. See if I have any in my other notes here. That's it. So any questions, any comments that?
What was the original height of the structure?
I'm sorry?
What was the original height of the structure?
I think it was 15 or 16 feet, looking
Okay.
at the photographs.
And then, I don't know if I missed it on here, what's the distance from the lake?
Go back to the first slides. We don't have that physically measured, but it's the 75-foot line is cutting through the building.
Okay, so it's,
Keep going a little bit, or right there.
it's the red, okay. Maybe.
We're in a difficult situation here. We've got, we can't move it to the other side of the road because of the streams. We need to keep it where it's located for security purposes. We're trying to be conscious and slope all the stormwater to the road where we can collect it in the trench drain and then filter it through the rain garden also. I've done these rain gardens in the past. The nice thing is this won't be in a public park like my last one, and people going picking flowers out of the last one we did.
Yeah, I'll let you guys.
Yeah.
I didn't get to look at all this ahead of time. so. Not chock-full.
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of trying to go with bioswales. I just always want to make sure there's actually a physical swale as well. To make sure that.
That's what a bioswale is.
Right, I mean, it should be vegetation on the edge of the hole, but just wanted to make
This
sure.
would be in the swale, bioswale.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure your picture was a little misleading, because it kind of implied that it was flat, and I'm like, I don't think so, but. Your three-dimensional drawing, your sketch of the actual swale. I guess really my biggest concern was the floodplain. I didn't see an elevation certificate. I don't know what the elevation is. You're adding that foundation, which means you drop the elevation of the building significantly. I tried to pull a flood map, and there's a huge zone A, approximate zone, to the north of this, where those streams come through. That whole area is flooded. Based on the picture in that depiction, I said I thought your building is gonna be either here or here, but I'm not sure. But it looks like you're in the middle of the zone A, so you're gonna need to do a floodplain evaluation. And with the new foundation, you're changing the elevation of the building. Even if you weren't, we could allow you as a town to rebuild. FEMA can't let you rebuild if you're in the floodplain. If your building's destroyed, you have to elevate. That's kind of one of their requirements, so we have to figure that out, and then you're up against the height cap. You may be fine, but I was unable to make a determination, so you're gonna need to, get it surveyed, and so what is the new
And we have a surveyor.
elevation?
There's professional survey by Sean Taylor.
Yeah, you had a lot of maps.
So it's on
and stuff,
there.
So I just.
Yeah, it's all been, and we've got the, we know the elevations, they're the 2 foot intervals that you're looking at. And I think if you were sent the PDF, we saying you'd be able to read the.
I didn't read any of the numbers. I saw the elevation, I saw the. And maybe I missed it. I don't see any numbers on.
It's not on this one, this one over, but we have submitted that information to them. You have it.
Okay, so you got that done?
It's at this scale
You
here, but
have the, yeah, it's at the 200 scale.
and it should have
But
been,
obviously, the finished floor, we said, I have it, if you go to the elevation, I have it about 2'8" above the existing grade.
Right, everything was all, but it's not tied into NAVD or NGD. It's not tied into a datum, so I don't know what elevation it is. I saw all the numbers in the ground.
Oh, we can put that on the.
That's what I need is that elevation. I mean, if BFE is 170 for the lake. We just need to know, what are we talking about? What is this elevation? Are you 5 feet above it? Are you really close to it? So.
I think I'm about 4 foot, knowing what I know of the dimensions. I'm just telling them.
Right, but again, it's gonna be important because you're adding that basement underneath to know what that basement elevation is gonna be. So we need to know that.
We need to sort of.
We need to see, yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking about the basement, because Jeff and I were just talking about this, but during the previous application. What if I don't put a slab in?
Then it's the first floor elevation.
I think that's what we might do. Because what we're doing is storing stuff to keep.
Right,
Yeah.
the reason FEMA uses the basement floor is because you can put mechanicals down. When you don't,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have a crawl space, you can't put
I'm
mechanicals.
very familiar with
Okay, okay,
design houses where I actually had to go and elevate the property.
right,
So I used to work for a national engineering firm. We did a lot of FEMA work. I'm very familiar with FEMA.
okay.
And my poor wife is a retired mortgage banker, heard a lot about. All I can tell you about FEMA maps from my own experience, they're inaccurate.
Well.
So what you have to do is you have to get a survey and go out and survey.
I would make them for a living.
Touche.
And I'm
I'm telling you, they're inaccurate.
And I'm gonna right now, the old ones, you're 100% correct, the new ones, you're 100% wrong. I can prove it to you, but that's a whole nother discussion. Yes, you're absolutely wrong, right? But the base flood elevation, the elevation they put on the maps is a regulatory elevation. You're not allowed to build it.
Oh, I know that.
Right, that's.
And I think we can cure that by having the first floor and with the
Right.
basement. is-
That's all we need is a number. You show us the sixth survey that says what the elevation of that building is gonna be, we're done. That's all I need.
I can provide that later.
Okay,
So what I would ask you to do is approve tonight with the condition that information is on the drawing instead of 1 foot above.
yeah, I have no problem adding that condition
Yeah.
if everybody's questions
Yeah.
are all answered and everything.
Yeah.
That's no problem at all.
Maybe like less than 5 years ago, they had FEMA maps changed. If you gotta go out in the field.
We do, they don't. Yeah, I get it. I know exactly what the process is, maps, but map modernization didn't update them.
So we have a good survey on this stuff too.
Yeah.
So we do have a surveyor.
We end this discussion.
Yes.
Let's move on. Let's end this discussion and move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's it.
It's in our schedule.
If I'm reading that wrong, it appears that part of the building is in that 75-foot zone,
Yes. The majority of it.
so that would,
But the roof slopes away. How does that work? Is the roof outside the 75 foot?
I don't know, but within that 75-foot, it's a 20-foot limitation. I don't,
And I think that what we're trying to do is design to recognize those things.
yeah.
I mean, the existing structure was a gable, very shallow gable roof, and that's why we're trying to, be conscious and. I should tell you, I teach the sustainability studio at UMA, so I'm all into this.
Well, it's just that I would like to see on the drawings, again, what is the height?
If you go to the elevations,
Because
Don,
the total height has got to be less, it's got to be 20 feet or less. Except for a little corner of it.
at the very end.
I know, sir.
So on the roadside, it's like 9 foot from grade. Grade, and then on the lakeside, it was a 21. And we were informed that we had to be under 25.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, so, we came in, we sat down with staff, we've been very proactive, and that's what we were telling,
25 feet,
25 feet.
that's not what our ordinance is.
Right.
That's why, I'm back, I want in that table,
You wanted to add
I
that?
wanted to ask what they said in case, because nobody can find that.
Right.
I had a hell of a time finding it today,
Yeah.
but we do need to do that.
I only know because you said it 2 or 3 years ago and I had to go find it.
Yeah, it should be in that table, not in the table, but maybe either a separate line
Yeah.
or.
Superscripted or something.
Yeah,
Put it below
something
and say, hey, this is the one exception.
Right.
Thank you. I'd like to see at some point some additional detail on bioswale, cross
Yeah,
section and
there'd be-
planting materials.
There's a detail of that submitted for permit. Yeah.
That's all I've got for questions.
I'm guessing this whole big, how many acre lot, that's all one lot,
Yes, sir.
so I guess we don't have an impervious.
No.
I was amazed at, I've been to the camp number of times in 1950. 1950. There's some great buildings, old buildings. I like historic buildings. It's a really cool. If you haven't been there, you should drive down.
I'd like to see
The
it.
chickens will be easy.
Don, did you find out whether
Oh,
every building on?
Go back up on the drawing.
I didn't have a chance
The
to.
one dark black line went down.
That was the trench drain.
I think.
That's buried and then it daylights into the
So it
bioswale.
looks like it came off the building though.
Where, I'm
No,
sorry,
it's
where?
Right there, right there. You see the end of the building, that black line coming down?
That's a retaining wall for the basement.
Okay, so that's a retaining wall.
Yeah, go to the floor plans, please. Yeah, we have to, because we're creating a walkout,
Okay.
whereas I think some people call it a daylight.
Well, I didn't see the line.
That's why we're at the 21 feet. A little more, a little more,
Okay, no, what we did.
Yeah, the other one's not as.
just a little more.
Oh, that's why.
The elevations show it, if you look at sheet 3. 0.2. It shows the retaining wall.
What I'm hearing is a question that would like to see revised drawings based on the elevation. And the certification of the elevations relative to the floodplain. So some that we're tabling. Understand that? For your motion to table.
I'll make a motion that we table.
I've got 2 seconds. Pick one down.
So all we need to do is give you an elevation of the first floor.
This is like,
And what Dawn said, or what said and done, what's that do be a foundation plan? And satisfying the 20 foot. Concession.
If there's additional changes. So if you go to a slab, if you go to a frost wall.
Oh, we'll just remove
Whatever, whatever.
that'd be in the construction drawings. We'll just, but I mean, you can make that a condition, there's no slab in the.
We'd like to see that.
Still got the
It'll
height,
be, I'll climb it.
regardless of
Tall
what
crawl
it's saying.
space.
Right, and then the second piece of that is gonna be to make sure we meet the height requirement. That 75 foot elevation distance is gonna be important, and if you're sloping it up towards the water, you're definitely gonna be within inside it, so you're at that 20 foot cap. So new drawings that show us that you're meeting that 20 foot cap, or your existing building, if you can establish what the existing building before it cut.
Did you like those?
I don't know, I don't know how you measure that, but you can try.
I can tell from, I was counting the stairs. That's how I know how elevated the building is on that photograph. And then I know the typical size of a 7-8 foot.
Okay.
I tell you. I've been doing this for 38 years, and I've done a lot of homes over the years. A lot of commercial work and. Just get a feeling for it.
Dawn, you have the seconds.
I had Greg made a motion, Don seconded that, if that's correct, and, are you gonna table it, or are you gonna continue it to a date, table, okay?
Motion second. All in favor?
I just wanna make sure all I gotta do is come back and give you a finished floor elevation, and I remove the slab from the basement.
And if necessary, required, change the drawings to their reflective standard.
And then it's minor changes for me to make, that's what I'm saying, all I gotta do is add that elevation for the first floor and remove the slab from the basement. That's what we're talking, right?
If that's your final design.
What do you mean?
Yeah, but it's nothing to, I mean, the design is what it is, we're just gonna tweak
Right.
things we need to do.
We need to certify, I mean, we have kind of tools, we have to certify, number one, that the floodplain. There's an elevation certificate, there's a surveyor certifying, here's what the floodplain elevation is, here's what our elevation is gonna be. That's number one. Number two is that the height of the building is under 20 feet because you're under the 75 foot. Those are the two requirements. Brent mentioned, the bioswale information, that would be great to help us, in the discussion phase. So if you're gonna come back, I would suggest bring that and anything Dawn mentioned in her sheet that you felt like you may want to address.
We're just gonna change the slope of the roof. And get it under as 150.
Again, we don't want to design it for you.
No, I'm just so used to like, this would be conditions and staff will just know that they look at that. So you've tabled it, we'll come back. I just want to make sure that I have everything in that, because I don't want to table it the second time in time. I want it all done.
Right.
You keep saying the first floor elevation, but it's the total elevation.
For the height of the building.
Yeah. The first floor.
I'm only a foot below that, so all I gotta do is drop it to a 12 roof. So, and it's a metal roof, so it won't keep it so. So, you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion? Did we vote on the?
There
motion?
wasn't a vote. Oh,
Didn't vote. We just.
All in favor? We did it.
Yeah, we did.
yeah, we did. I wrote down unanimous, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm saying no, you
Sorry,
didn't.
boss.
Did vote.
Thank you.
Never do that.
Moving on to other business. And first item is zoning ordinance table 2 land use outside the shoreline zone. Dawn, you want to correct it?
Giving another whack at it, you guys. So we discussed this at a previous workshop.
I'm sorry, what do you go? Just explain that it's.
Yeah.
The material, oh, so in front of you, you have printed copies of. Thank you.
I thought it was a clicker to move the.
Oh, no. It's not here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Stresses me so much. Okay. So in front of you tonight, you have the comprehensive plan, which was adopted by the council. It went to the state. They reviewed it. They did have some comments on it. They're not required, they're not mandatory changes, they're suggestions.
The state.
Yes, different departments in the state. So what, I talked to Anthony about this, the council on Monday night was this past Monday, created a comprehensive plan steering committee. I apologize, I can't remember if that's exactly what it's called, but what they're gonna do is they're gonna have a group of people who will look at the status of the plan and who's responsible for it and just kind of keep an ongoing check of where we're at with stuff so that it does get implemented. And you all have many pieces in that table of goals and objectives and tasks. So that committee can look at the state's recommendations and decide if there's anything they want to incorporate there. So for all intents and purposes, this is the comprehensive plan that you have in front of you.
It's our copies to take.
That's your copy. You can write on it. You
Read
can,
every day. Yes. Okay.
And we don't know what those are. And there's a committee that possibly. Are they gonna be modifying this or they're just going to make sure to?
they may decide to take the suggestions of the state. I can get you a copy of the suggestions. And I was informed that that committee will decide if they're going to make changes or not. in which case there probably would be public input, board input.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that making a decision based on this.
Yeah.
Change it that. Would be, you know, run the wheels.
So let's take it home, but don't quite start reading at night.
I think it's safe to. So I'm gonna send and I'll make, do you want a hard copy or just an email I'll send it to all of you. I'll scan and send those
It's
comments.
just electronics.
Okay.
I think I read it. I thought it was posted on, when the town announced that it had been approved.
Oh,
I
they
thought
may
there was a
have.
link to it, 'cause I remember seeing the state, so I didn't go back to this.
There's a link with the state edits on.
I didn't see that part. All I saw was congratulations, went through, you did a fantastic job, and it's like, okay, so the state's approved the plan, but I didn't go to the next page to see what recommendations that they were making, so.
Okay.
Will this take precedence over the stuff we're working on now, or will we finish what we're doing now and then?
What you're doing now is in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and everyone had looked at it at one point. It wasn't the final version, but I don't think anything changed from when you all were looking at it previously.
You extracted what was in here.
You all decided what to, sure. And so
Yeah.
what you're working on,
For that.
we can identify at some point so that we can, like I had said to Rick earlier, I want these to be highlighted and dog-eared and tattered, and we want to implement this plan. So, take a look at those goals and objectives moving forward, and that will help guide where you want to have your workshop. So I believe right now we are in keeping with what is being asked of this board.
Okay.
So the other copy there was for code enforcement officers, they have to be certified in the different aspects of their job. So for shoreland zoning, the state has educational component, and I went into it was remote and in person, and Mark went to the meeting and I attended remotely. And this is the document that they use. It has great graphics in it. I showed it to Rick earlier today and he thought maybe everyone would like a copy of it. And in addition to that, Mark, yeah, picture's worth 1,000 words. So in addition to that, Mark is going to host a training here so that other code enforcement officers can come to the presentation, and the board will be invited to go as well. So this presentation, the person who Colin, I think you are all familiar with his name, gave the presentation, and so you would be able to ask questions. But this is the presentation that was used. So he's setting that up now, and I'll let you know when that will be.
Great.
The next one, there's something from,
MMA.
yeah, that's it, yeah,
Yes, so
I'll get it up to you.
they finally did remote attendance. You can attend in person or remotely to the MMA hearing, so planning board, zoning board, and some of you have already taken it, maybe more than once. But it's a good refresher, and there was an option to sign up for it, and we could all watch it remotely, so we can watch it here, participate. Yeah, you don't get the dinner like if you go in person, but I could make up one. So I did sign everyone up for that and reserve the room, and I can tell you in just a moment. It is Thursday, October 10th. And it starts at 4:30.
How long will it last, do you know?
It's listed as 4:30 to 8:30. But it says dinner will be provided midway through the workshop. So it's live, so I assume they're gonna take a break and we can have snacks, so.
Is that next meeting?
That is, our next meeting is Wednesday, the 9th. So it'd be, yeah.
So that's October 10th, 4:30,
Mm-hmm.
be here.
Correct. Yep, and I sent an invitation out to the zoning board. I don't remember if I invited,
Watch it on the screen. Yeah.
yep. So wherever you want, watch it. I believe we'll be able to ask questions.
And this is, which one is this again?
It's the Maine Municipal Association.
No, which, I took one. Is this the same one I took?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Did you get the manual with that?
You got that
I
little
printed a
book.
copy
Little
for,
book,
That little
yeah.
book.
Did I not give you a printed copy, Betty?
You never did get the.
Oh, okay, well then I will bring
I did
copies
get a
of
book.
that.
I had it with me a couple times.
No, that wasn't the manual.
Yeah, I'll make copies of the manual.
You could sign.
Oh, I never got it.
It's somewhere in between the two documents that you received tonight in terms of length. Yeah.
I got it.
I was gonna get one.
I printed a couple, I might still have it set aside.
I'm trying to figure out the different sporting events.
I guess I just also want to note that all the work that you did on the previous ordinance amendments, when you had discussion page by page, Ed was here. Those were posted for your meeting on the 9th of October. So it's a public hearing. And I'll give you those materials before the meeting, you know, what it is that was posted. And when you conclude that public hearing, you'll make a recommendation to the council as to what they should do with your work. No, I haven't heard anything from them, no. So hopefully it's not gonna be controversial. I don't believe there was anything in there that should be, but
So you're gonna get that in.
yes, I will put together a packet of what it is that you reviewed and wanted posted for public hearing, the public hearing notice, and then you'll have it all again, page by page in front of you. Oh, when I talked to the applicants from tonight, I gotcha. Okay, I will confirm that with them. I do not have any applications for the 9th. So you have the public hearing and then any workshop items that you want to discuss. Well, that's true, potentially. Depending on how quickly they can get that information together. So one applicant knows that it's the 9th and not the 10th.
Was that person?
Well, one's gonna have snacks, so that would inform my decision.
Exactly. Obvious.
One's only 3 hours. 4.
That's true.
One could be 4.
Okay, so let me just look at my notes from earlier today. Status of the public hearing. I'm gonna ask the town manager to put the zoning map back on the council agenda. Ideally at the same time that you move the zoning ordinance changes. So I'm gonna put that zoning map on the next agenda that I can get on, and I'm hoping that it'll coincide with the amendments to the language and adoption of the map. So because that zoning map has not been formally adopted yet. And then the next thing, now you have your plans, you could double check, but the next thing I have down on the agenda, on your task list would be to attack site plan regulations. I'd want to get those to you at least a week in advance so you could take a look at them and chew on them. But a draft site plan ordinance. So I anticipate, unless you all direct me in a different place, that's what I'll be doing, is getting that to you. That's it. That's what I'm hoping, yep. That's what I'm intending. If that's based on our conversation and just assuming that the whole board is right there with you. Unless I get pointed in a different direction, that's my intention, is to have that for you. Yes.
So like we are telling them exactly how, like,
Yeah, so now you have the zoning ordinance, this is what you can have where, and you have dimensional requirements, setbacks and height, and you have some performance standards. But site plan goes further with that, and it spells out more ways to protect adjacent properties and uses and the character of the community. So it gets more detailed in the regulations that you're looking at pertaining to landscaping and parking lot layout and lighting and the elevations of the building. And, it can be, you could go to the nth degree, it could be very broad, depends on the community. So I will present something that's somewhere in the middle, and you can decide where you'd like to take it.
It would still comply with
Yeah, so right now, everything is a conditional use permit. So instead of a conditional use permit, you'd have things come in as a subdivision or a site plan.
Our reach would could become broader,
It could become broader, but more specific criteria.
yes.
Yeah.
It would incorporate.
Yes, and on that, I just want to make a note that I will be updating the application checklist tomorrow to include certificate of the flood elevation being 1 foot above.
It's,
I know, but yeah,
if it's clearly under the map. Not an elevation, it's,
I'll,
don't know.
I'll try to make it more clear for,
Well, for, especially when you're in this. In here, in the flow. Completely.
Yeah.
Just to make that requirement.
yep.
So I mean, some properties, it's not a question, we have, you know.
Well, I will make it more of a par for the course that you're gonna get that information.
You've already got in there, I think, that I brought up about previous expansions and permitting and all.
So if I'm following you.
I saw it in this,
The 169,
yeah,
that's the one you're talking about, Blue Cove. I tried to include a history.
Yeah.
Within the narrative that I took out of the code file, so. If it went to the zoning board, if it went to the planning board or got a, septic design or a building permit. I tried to summarize that because we had an instance recently where we have a potential violation and we don't know. 100% what was approved, what the existing condition was. So I'm trying to incorporate that. So as you move forward,
so that would be on us to get that or the applicant?
I am gonna do that.
You're gonna get.
At this point, we'll see,
Because,
because we have the records, yeah.
yeah, and they may only have been there 5 years, stuff could have taken place.
So if there's a hole in your, like instance I pointed out, I didn't see a building permit for that. But it doesn't mean there isn't one that exists. And then he talked to the code enforcement officer. So I'm just gonna flag it as facts. Here's the background that you have.
That's good.
And hopefully that'll help moving forward. So if there are questions around what the property was before you made an approval, we'll have that baseline.
Sure. Sounded like he moved it for a couple of, for a number of years. He moved it back, did he move it back without a permit?
Yeah, that was in the history as well.
Yeah, there was a permit, but they said they never, didn't look like they ever did.
Well, there was
Right.
reference to,
Yeah.
at some point, they got approval to move it, but it was shown on the same location and all the plans that I saw, so I didn't know, well, did it get moved, is it?
Yeah.
And then the
So-
permit for it, so that was unclear to me, and so I put out there as a
Yeah,
question.
We granted. If it's a structure, it's still good, but that's. That's not anything we can do anything about.
Next item on.
So then under workshop for tonight is the land use table. And you did go through this at a previous meeting and decided we're just gonna leave it the way it is, but I'm taking another swing at it and you all wanted to hire a planner and guide you, and I'm telling you from a legal perspective, I think we really want to consider putting more uses into the use table and making sure that they're defined and making sure that they are in keeping with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. So one of the things that I provided was, and this is just cut and paste from the documents. It's because each district, do you have papers?
No.
So
This one,
Just the.
that one, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not on table 2.
At the end, right?
right,
I'm sorry, I thought I had an extra one.
I don't know, I shuffled.
I do.
I know.
Was that from the workshop last?
Yeah, and then I
Okay.
copied, yes, it is.
Okay.
So all this is is what the 24 comprehensive plan states about that district. So, I'm looking at the general residential. They're all the same in terms of the layout. So it's what the district is, what the comprehensive plan states. Again, cut and paste right from the document. The zoning ordinance, same thing. There's the blurb, what the purpose of in the zoning ordinance. So ideally or legally, the zoning ordinance is supposed to be in keeping with the comprehensive plan. And then your uses should create what it is that you're looking for in that zone. So I'm looking at this one here. Looking for mixed, under general residential, mixed residential commercial uses on a limited scale, compatible with existing development and close to town services and utilities, which is broad, but you want to make sure that what you're allowing there and how you're allowing it is in keeping with the purpose of the zone, what the goal of the zone is, which again should go back to the comprehensive plan to be consistent with that. So all this document is the facts laid out that you can use if you want to revisit it, the table of uses, and look at what's allowed in each district against the overarching documents.
That's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, and my concern is that when it's too broad, it puts the planning board in a position, for better or for worse, of legislating, because you're making decisions on the uses as opposed to it being predetermined. And that's the council's role. And it's also a moving target. So it's hard for people to know what is permitted where. And so
In other words, it's going to the legal.
I'm concerned from a legal aspect, correct?
It would be true.
So, and ultimately,
So specifically, when somebody comes in and we uses, because we've generated these uses so specific that it's like, oh, well, this is a bottle redemption, but they don't return bottles, but they just drop off bags and somebody comes, we had the Roper things, like, what is that? I can easily see us having 3 or 4 different uses, and then what do you regulate them to? They're doing all of these things. Do they get regulated, all of them, one of them? That's where I always get concerned about trying to, and then if you accidentally, you put a use and you don't have specific guidance on it, and you might add specific guidance on this other use because you didn't anticipate that use. You can also get painted into a corner that way by saying you define this use, and it really doesn't say where you can have this and where you can't have this, and we didn't do our due diligence and define it out, so. I get what you're saying, but I'm also really cautious of saying we need to define everything. That's the lawyer speak, right? They're gonna say you need to define everything. Well, that's great, but if we do a bad job defining it, well, then it's gonna be a mess. It's really gonna be a mess, because if we define something that's multi-use, how do we regulate that?
And aren't we legally supposed to kind of, look at it and interpret it? Any document that you read, you're going to interpret technically.
yep, you're gonna,
Interpreting the law, how it's written. So it's not like we're making we're not really legislating it,
you have to be able to,
Applying.
you have to apply it consistently and equitably. It has to be fair for every applicant that comes in. And the way it is now, I think it would be difficult.
And well, the other challenge is as these things come up. Right, solar farms weren't a thing, 15 years ago, marijuana wasn't a thing 10 years ago, these things didn't exist. The minimum.
Marijuana.
Oh, yeah, not in stores, where you could walk in and buy it. So, you couldn't, so these things didn't exist and we had to create it, so, and they're by far the most controversial type things we had. The solar ordinance, I think what our biggest failure is the first time we saw one, we should have said, let's stop this. Because clearly we don't know what we're doing and we need to define what they need. So I kind of feel like we're not legislating if we're like, well, put the brakes on, we don't know what this is. We're gonna now go back and define this, there's a moratorium, none of this until we figure out how to define this. So we do have that protects us. We don't have to make a decision on those topics as they come in.
Play devil's advocate.
Yep,
So in the rural district, high impact commercial uses are allowed,
yep.
which is anything that doesn't fall into low medium, which means everything's allowed. You had mentioned this at a previous,
Oh, yeah.
is that the intent? Is it in keeping with?
No, I mean, they still have to meet the 14 factors, and one of those factors, number 13, is very clear about the neighborhood. And it doesn't say the neighbors, it says the character and the, I can't remember the exact wording, but the character and the surrounding properties. So is that was the big thing about the person that wanted to do, before we updated the mining ordinance. We had somebody come in with rock crushing. And it was 800 linear feet. The person could actually see where they wanted to put the rock crushing. And it's like, well, no, that's not in keeping with that neighborhood, with that facility. If they would have had a larger property and no one would have been able to see it or necessarily even hear it, we may have been more inclined to approve it. Because that's kind of the idea in the rural zone. It's a rural zone, right? You need to have more space to do things. You shouldn't be able to push right to your property line and be, kind of like a HUD, because that doesn't make any sense. That's not in the rural zone.
So if you have site plan regulations, you have more standards to apply to achieve that goal. But without those in place, someone says, well, what are the rules? I want to bring an application to you. What are the rules?
I don't know.
And what you've just said is very broad. There's no,
It is.
you're not telling, and
It
I
is.
think that it's too broad. That's my concern.
Okay,
They could always come
I think it's
in
different from
and have a conversation.
rehab.
that would be the recommendation, to say, come in, have a discussion, and we will try to say what it is we're expecting. And if there's gonna be more of those, we should absolutely do what you're saying and define it. Just like we've done with marijuana, just like we did with mineral extraction, just like we did with solar farms. We've done it exactly the way I think we should do it. To define it before they show up, I think that's wrong. I think we could get ourselves into a lot of trouble by doing that.
Is that what you're suggesting?
I think.
No, I have consulted with legal on this because I was talking to him about another item and he's agreed that the way we have it, it's such a broad interpretation. It leaves us open.
Get on the reverse.
Yeah.
You tell me what is missing and what specific things we needed to identify on here.
Short-term rentals.
No.
This is not open to public discussion at this point, is it?
So I gave you a couple of documents. One of them is, and I took it from a state manual on how to create ordinances, land use ordinances. It's a use table. It's an example use table. And this is
Right.
the way
There
some
was a whole
communities,
lot of things on there.
So-
But again, if the town is not implementing those type of applications, do we want to include those? Is it clutter? Does it make our ordinances confusing, make them harder to interpret? And again, I'm worried about leaving holes the other way, that we define the use, that now they can apply to other zones or other reaches, is it only in the rural zone? I mean, we have to, anything we put in there, we have to close the loop on. And then we need to add it to everywhere we used it, and that's where we fall down sometimes, I think, is where you reference it. And it comes back to the thing that Don just pointed out, the height thing. It's very hard to find. It's not clear on a table. Are we contradicting ourselves essentially? And that's what I worry about. The more we add, the more, so I'm not trying to say, no, we can't add those. I'm just saying, I do not want to take the state definitions and throw them in our ordinance. That'll make a mess. You say which ones we think, which ones you're getting applications for, which ones you think we should define. We didn't define those. I'm not opposed to that. But to define them for the sake that somebody defined them, I think is silly. I think that's a bad precedent to set.
but let me ask you, what should be allowed in the village? And you just narrowed that list down to what you want to allow in the village.
Right, but if we don't know what the list is, how do we know what to narrow it down to?
Well, so I've given you a sample of what other communities use, and it's tedious. I'm not disagreeing with you. I would rather move on to something else, but I just feel it's important I'm raising it a second time, and I am advisory only. I did check with legal to see if I was leading in the wrong direction, but no, he agreed that, it should go away from the low, medium, high impact and be more specific.
Get more trouble.
But I want to fall on my sword. It's your,
I get that, but we went through that exercise and we tore it apart up and down with the low, medium and high and felt like pretty much everything fell in there reasonably well. So I would make the case that the lawyer is wrong because we actually have facts and rules in there that govern them. How many people do they have? how many, what's their business type, that all falls in there. So could there be a business type that falls in there that's a weird category?
So, okay, I'm just
Is there
gonna
a
call,
data service center or something that we're not, a cell phone call center that's not defined anywhere? But if we start putting all that stuff in, we don't even know we don't even know what they look like. I mean, we would have to spend crazy amount of time to regulate something that we don't even have any idea what that would look like. And are we now opening the door to cell phone call centers by adding, I'm just picking on that as an example where, something like, the T-Mobile place where it's 600 employees, really big place. And what is that allowed and where should we allow that? Should that be allowed in the village?
well, I would say right now it's allowed anywhere, right? Or not anywhere, but it would be allowed in the rural district. And you have the criteria of the conditional use permit, but you don't have any design standards. So if someone comes to me tomorrow and they want to put a call center, well, that's probably going to be high impact, but I'm not going to know for sure until they talk to you. So they have to come to the board and say, here's the use, you make that determination. How are they going to design their site? Because the standards are so broad, how are they going to know where to locate certain things on there and what the lighting, restriction should be? And so the site plan ordinance will help with that, but they have to have some guidance. It can't be we'll make it up as we go, is where I'm feeling uncomfortable.
I just think the site plan ordinance would be very different for a manufacturing building facility versus a call center versus a service type industry. I think that's what I'm worried about, is we're gonna create all these different templates and be constantly chasing what could come in. And I don't wanna chase what could come in, I wanna chase what is coming. And if we can create a simple template, sure, but I don't know if we can do that without making it broad. What did we solve if it's so broad? And we just created another checklist on top of our existing checklist that we already said you have to do. You see what I'm saying? I mean.
I do, and it's tedious, and you have to be careful that you can back yourself in a corner. And people coming in and I'm thinking, don't ask the question, don't ask the question. But to the best of your ability, to define things without making it so specific that it's gonna preclude the ability for reasonable development. But there has to be clear rules for someone who wants to come develop. And I'm concerned about that. Well, it's not here yet, so we don't have to define it yet. Because when they ask, it's too late.
Well, that's exactly what happened with the marijuana.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, we can't define what we don't know what's gonna come next. We don't know what that is yet.
And if we do it ahead of time, we could really
We
be,
could get ourselves into trouble
Yeah.
by.
Opposite too, but oppositely, you could get yourself in trouble, because if every different person that comes in here, you had to do the exact same
True.
thing to the letter for them, and you're not, without some kind of checklist, it's gonna go.
Well,
Like
that's, I
someone will
mean,
say you're being prejudiced against this one. It's
right,
prejudiced
but that's
against
where
that.
the high, medium, low, and the definition that's in there, to me, that defined all those pieces. On the size of the business, the type of business. That's already predefined. And impact of the neighborhood is gonna be project to project specific. Stormwater resources, project to project specific, there's all of our checklist
well, I
is,
personally
is,
want to
is,
be.
I
is,
don't wanna go to court, so.
I don't think we have to.
Oh,
Well-
we would.
Dawn.
No, we would.
I've been there. I think that maybe looking at site plan regulations and then looking at this one last time, the site plan regulations will be more specific in terms of how development could look. And that might make you more comfortable with making a decision about the uses.
Go around and get him.
I think I'm with Fred on this. Same.
So these are predefined uses already.
They,
This is basically a cut and paste from,
those are in the zoning ordinance right now. So one of the things
predefined.
you want to make sure
Right.
that those uses that you're allowing are consistent with with comprehensive plan got updated. Is there anything in the comprehensive plan specific to those zones that is going to change what's in there? Like, geez, this really doesn't seem compatible now that we've updated our comprehensive plan, or, making sure that it's all consistent. So even just looking at it from that perspective, I think is a good exercise. But those are the existing listed uses.
So where's the rub lie here, Greg, then? I mean, if we've defined them, they're existing uses, we know what you can and can't do in an industrial district, what?
I think we're covered. What we talked about specifically was 30, 31, and 32 on the table, which are low impact commercial, medium impact commercial.
Okay,
They're not defined as what that is. There is some information in the ordinance. We do lay out, a number of people, number of customers per hour. There's
Okay.
Information in there, so what that would fall and the type of business, and some are automatically high. So, and then they're regulated differently. So if you
Sure.
see that we've, low impact is planning board in certain zones, but the code enforcement officer only in a lot of zones.
okay,
So they don't need to come to us if it's considered low impact and they're in the village. Right, it's low impact because they're low, they're what's called low impact commercial. So, and we kind of went down this, and I'm concerned that we could define another 30 uses. And still not get what walks in the door tomorrow.
oh, sure,
And then we have 30 uses that we need to copy and paste and insert into all the ordinances, all the pieces to make sure they're included. Because we've had this problem before when we added marijuana and it's like, well, it should have been over here and over there. It's inserting these isn't always that clean and sometimes you make mistakes. So.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of research going into each use and each table.
And
You
each.
can't just arbitrarily have a quick conversation.
Right,
It's like basically setting up an ordinance for each one to figure out where it would fit.
so I feel like we have guidance for giving us guidance, so it's already in this. And the lawyer's gonna say, well, no, you didn't say, they're doing bubblegum factory, you need to define what that is and how to do that. And I'm saying there's too many uses, and if we end up with a use that's in multiple uses, then we're really screwed, because then we don't know what to regulate to. Do they regulate to all of them? Well, that's not right. Do we regulate to just the ones we want? Then we're doing what Betty said, then we're picking and choosing, we can't do that. So we have to be really careful, and Ropers was a good example, because they sell, they're selling beer and wine now, they're going for their liquor license, they're returning bottles, they had a whole bunch of crazy things that you go, if we define those uses, they would have been 4 different things.
Right.
And what do you call them? How do you define that? And they even had a tasting room, is that now a restaurant? I mean, how do you define these things? And the more you define, the harder it is to say, well, how do I regulate them if they're all of these things?
we think MMA could provide some guidance on that pretty quickly.
They can.
And say, based on what we've seen elsewhere, here's how we would recommend you approach
I
that.
remember one of these discussions sitting in on the Augusta planning board, and it was crazy how they went in a circle. Because they're like, no, it's this kind of use, it's this kind of use, it's this kind of use, and nobody would agree on the kind of use. So they couldn't even settle on the type of use. So I'm not
Okay.
saying, if there's uses that we're missing, I'm not saying we don't define, like marijuana, it rose to the point, we need to define it.
Sure.
And we define it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, so,
That's my
Yeah.
point. is
Yeah.
I think we've got the uses. If we're starting to get multiple applications for certain types of businesses, I think then, yeah, we want to do that. But if you're a small business, medium-sized business, you want to move to Winthrop, you're gonna use the high, medium, low impact, and you're gonna say, this is the category I fall in. Hopefully they'll come talk to Dawn, and if they have questions, talk to the board, and that's where we can help define what that means and what we think, based on the ordinance, our interpretation of the rules we already have written, what category they fall in.
got it.
That's kind of my argument, is we already have the categories defined. If you haven't read those, take a look at them, because they do a pretty good job of laying out what's low impact, what's
Okay.
medium, what's high.
Okay.
And really, the only difference is who makes the decision. Is it the planning board or the code officer? Or is it not allowed? Certain zones, it's not allowed.
Okay.
Also, no.
So I tend to agree with Dawn. Let's take a look at site location. Site plan review, see what that looks like, and if there's any gaps after that, maybe we revisit this.
I agree with that.
Well, I think we should be proactive rather than reactive. I see that reactive could get you in a lot of hot water. At the same time, I do see that we don't know what we don't know.
That's the point.
But you will never know. I mean, that's a question that will never be answered. So I tend to agree to Dawn that they've got to be a little more defined.
Well, is
Right, your motivation for when you see us done is so that if somebody comes in and says, can we do this? You're looking for it to be more black and white, so you can just answer it, instead of having to send it to us.
It's not me personally, but it's the ordinance, they should be, the average person should be able to look at the ordinance and figure that out, but I think now it's very difficult to do that. But I think that talking about site plan regulations can put a lot of protections in place and then revisit, and because I know what Greg's saying about, and this is another thing too, you can define it to the nth degree, and I always say at these, when they have the zoning trainings, people ask questions so obscure, like, if I take my shirt off and I put it on my head, is it a shirt or is it a hat? Like, you can just go away, you know, so I mean, it's tedious. But it's not necessarily like, oh, I don't want to have to answer that question. I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to answer it consistently in the same way because it's so broad. Yeah, that's the concern.
We have another priority one.
Yeah, if you set this aside, I will.
Should we maybe, as a suggestion, just look through the comprehensive plan, see if there's anything glaring? And then maybe come back and have another conversation to see if there's anything that we see that we think would be simple and helpful to put in, and then kind of go from there.
I like that. No matter how detailed we get, sure as hell, somebody's gonna come with something that we didn't think to put in there anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it boils down to setting priority, what those things are for the world.
To do this, like we're talking here, that could be our priority for the next year,
Right.
and then we still miss something.
So can I suggest we think about this, and make a decision next time,
And the site plan regulations will, like, they have those broad statements of, well, it can't have, you know, a negative impact to X, or that tells them how not to do that. So the site plan regulations, my big concern is in the rural district, because it's so open without some specific standard. That would be where the problem would be, but I'm gonna get you some site plan regulations to start that conversation.
That's true.
Don, give me a favor and give me notice when this topic comes back up.
Sure.
So I can be here,
Sure.
because, so I'll tell you, Mr. Stewart, I totally disagree with you. You have to have definitions. And Don will tell you, I'm like the first person calling her going, what's the definition of this? And then I'm like, tour something, we don't have a definition. You should have a definition of single family residence. It's usually based on the number of unrelated people living in the house. I love the fact that I can have hogs on my,
We have that. I mean, we have a number of definitions.
it's not in your definitions, which is where it should be.
Single family residence,
Yeah, there's no definition.
pretty sure it is.
Yeah, we'll let you know on the next.
Yeah, because I so I have a lot of planning experience. I was on planning commission for 8 years. I was vice chair. I was on the board of architectural review. I've spoken at a lot of planning workshops. So I'm pretty interested in all this, particularly now that I'm here and I'm looking at the accepted uses for general residential, and I've got a real disagreement on what that should be. So I don't want to live next to any commercial use. I didn't buy my house to live next to low impact, high impact, medium impact. And our zoning ordinance is kind of just out there.
Yeah, it's been out there and we've approved.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's improving, because the last time I was here, there wasn't a requirement for storm detention. It was like you had to put grass down,
Right.
so
Thank you.
I'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Small.
All right, so, what we've agreed to do is look further, look at comprehensive plans. I think what I'm hearing we're saying is that we need to set some priorities on what those other uses are. Go to work on. I understand that. If they are, well,
How did it work when you two or the three of you got together to look at the zoning map? You guys had conversations and then brought them back to the broader planning board?
what we did is we took this physical map, so.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't mean the process itself, but you stepped out of this room and you had conversations, and I'm thinking ex parte.
Subcommittee, you're talking about
Yes.
as a subcommittee?
Yes, so like maybe Greg and I sit down and we have a couple beers and we hash through this and bring Aaron into it, and the three of us can come back to the board with some type of plan of attack on.
Yeah, two of us.
Do those-
Three of us has to be at a meeting.
I think
Yeah, you
that's-
can't make any decisions, but you can't have formal
Well, no,
business,
make no
but
decision.
yeah,
If
it's
we-
advisory.
If we sat, had this discussion and said, okay, then we go back to the board and say, here's the plan.
I don't think we can do that.
I'm gonna,
Will do that?
Absolutely.
We can't make any decision then.
Well, I don't think we'll get through.
No, then you've got to bring it back.
It's
I
considered
think
a
what Brent's asking is.
Yeah, I'm gonna
what's the process that allowed you and.
Yes.
Try to plan.
Thank you.
The process.
Sorry.
Basically, I think it was David that volunteered you and I
Yes.
at a meeting. And said, would you two be willing to accept with Joel, with Katie Carr?
Yeah.
And go through and review the paper map with the digital map. And make sure that they match. And we went off and did that, we met with Joel several hours and did that process. Brought it back to board with, and again, very clearly, we're not gonna do the whole thing again with the board. It was for us to share with the board what we did for her and share with them the digital. And I think we break down a couple areas in question, but overall, that worked. That was the process, and that was designated by the board.
So if a smaller work group got together and came up with some idea, we could come back, present it to the board. Board could vote on it, yea, nay.
And I would recommend we get two members that don't agree.
I think you have to look at it. Can you do that?
just want to double check, did you, so that wasn't considered a meeting, you didn't have, no one had to notice it?
No,
And then,
maybe they did, but they didn't.
They didn't make any decision.
They didn't make any decisions.
they weren't discussing an application.
Discussing any applications. or-
Decision was
Yeah.
made after we were done and
Right,
presented it back to the planning board.
they came back and presented to the planning board.
That makes sense to me. I'll follow up just to make sure there isn't any legal question around that, but
It was open.
Well, yes, that is a public, when you presented to the board, that was part of the open public meeting. Right, but the work you did
Yeah.
wasn't an open public.
Kind of like
meeting,
the
not
work
all
you
of us.
do. We had to make everything you do public.
But the board agreed it also.
This is where it's made public.
so are
This
there-
is an animal, and we were doing physical comparison to documents, which very physical in terms of where you're talking about discussing the pros and cons of what's being proposed here and determine what path forward you should recommend to the board and would end up voting on it. And two, perhaps you come up with three items that are priorities and should be going to design those in more detail.
We could structure the conversation such that it is a comparison. Like what we've got now against another model ordinance that we could look at. And we could come back and say, here's where we think there could be some overlap, or we could,
Depending on how many people are in that group, it's considered a meeting.
So that'd
That's
be
the- I think that's the way the rulings usually go. You can only get together so many people. Other than that is considered a meeting. Now, you can look, but that's been my.
yeah,
experience.
well, and planning boards can have subcommittees and they do. I've just not worked with a subcommittee of the planning board before, so it may be exactly what you've done with the maps or maybe something a little different, but I'm gonna follow up. Cause I had already also at one point said, I'd like to do a build out analysis, a build out analysis. We got a lot on our plate, so I'm not gonna revisit that right now, but you all talked about the, how you had a subcommittee before, so I'll look at the logistics of that just to make sure.
Committee, then that would change that. But I do believe there's so many people that get together, it's considered a meeting.
And I'm certainly not trying to circumvent whatever there may be for requirements. I'm just throwing out the idea that maybe a couple of us can get together, knock our heads together and come up with a plan that the board can.
But I think, I mean, we're still waiting. I think John was gonna get us.
Yeah.
Examples, which is really, I think, the first step.
I'm sorry, examples of,
Site.
oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And we're gonna take that up and then let's table. The chairman. That.
Okay.
Same time, we've got the plan. Sure, there's plenty of material in there that create. And between those, we may come up with what those priorities are. And then the subcommittee meets and says, okay, this is the direction we need to go, we have to recommend that. Agreeable?
Yes,
So after the next meeting, then it may be feasible to go do with your.
Yeah.
Agree? Okay. I don't think we need a formal action. Tabling this,
I don't think so.
agreeable?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dawn, what else you have? Recover?
Apologize one moment.
We're almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah, no, I think that's all,
Okay, so that's it, let's do. Okay. May have 2 applications back, we may have other applications, we don't.
There won't be any other applications because the deadline's gone by.
One of them back,
Mm-hmm.
we have how to work, which agree. It's like buying.
Just gonna back up for a moment. So the noticing requirement, it wasn't tabled to a date and time specific. It's on them, right? When they're gonna come back. So if I don't have it by Friday, day after tomorrow, I need to send out notices on Friday. So I will let them know that and maybe they can get information. Pardon me?
You're talking about.
Yes. So if they can, then we'll do that. Otherwise they'll be on the. Yeah. Yeah.
Even when we revisit, it still has to be.
That's the way I've always interpreted and applied it. I
Okay.
think, and Mark said that you didn't in the
No,
past.
that's what I was
Yeah, I
saying.
don't think we did. If it was tabled, you said get to it.
Yeah, then we,
It was already pre-noticed, same application, but.
public doesn't know.
Yeah, I would think
Yeah,
you'd have to
well,
know.
and both of them could have substantial changes.
Yeah.
You know, with the 2 different challenges and elevations, they both may have, and if they substantially change it, should we notice that? I probably would say yes, I mean, just so we don't get in trouble.
I think we should do it anyway. I know we have it in the past.
I agree, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that, and if it puts the pressure on them, we can put them on for the next, you know, for the next available meeting if they can.
So the only section is that they don't require us that they want to be any different.
Yeah, so I'll know on Friday whether or not they're gonna move forward or if they're gonna be on a different agenda. Because it could be the next one after that, it could be in November, we don't know.
18-week. Landscape. How quickly are they coming up on that issue?
It's December 2023, so they're also
So they
at 80 there at 9 months, they're halfway through.
So they have time, that was the question.
They're not like.
They're not a pinch.
2-week deadline to get this.
Yeah, no, I think they'll be okay.
The other, so. Appearing,
Public hearing for the ordinance. And then if either of those items move forward, and I will have a site plan draft that you can start discussing. That's plenty.
The
That's
next
plenty.
meeting is the public meeting for the.
Zoning
ordinance.
amendments.
Yeah, and for the public.
and I would be. Bit of a sweep, that's the person.
I'll go over the agenda with you in advance, but that would be my suggestion. Yep.
We obviously need discussion, ongoing discussion. Discussion. Comprehensive plan.
I think it'd be good to have a list of these different topics that we're kicking around. I know we talked about subdivision ordinance and a few other things, and it would just be good to say, okay, here's what's on our list, have our priority shifted. Let's tackle one at a time rather than tackling all of them kind
Good
of
idea.
in the middle and making a mess of ourselves. Just to keep it straight.
So like a summary of projects in progress?
Yeah, just what's the status and then, okay, once that one's kind of moved on to approval, we can pick up the next one, but let's not. I mean, but it could be due to your schedule or, you know, you might need to gather information or whatever, so just. I think it'd be good to have maybe some kind of a quick sum of status. You know, here's the things we have on the list, here's kind of the status of these things. You know, and this is the priority list and, okay, we're working on this one during this meeting and this one is on hold until we finish these two or whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy to lay that out and then you guys will decide.
Just something.
How you
simple,
wanna
right?
address
Just
it.
something simple, because we could run into a problem where, okay, we want the site plan information. You're not able to capture that, and next week we're like, well, we're not talking about it because you didn't capture it, so what's the point? So it's like, we don't wanna talk about it yet, we table it out, we see if there's something else we can pick up and take a look. So just, I think it'd be good to just keep that in our mind, so we don't lose track of anything. I don't wanna lose track of the.
Kind of worthless.
Yeah, I don't wanna,
Yeah.
I don't wanna lose track of the subdivision ordinance, but I don't want it to take precedent either, it's not like we have 100 of them banging down the door that we need to go and fix that, but it's definitely got some problems that we should address.
Yeah,
So I think, you know, and if something else comes up in front of it, fine. But I think we should just have a list of kind of what our rough tasks are. And not overwhelm ourselves by putting 5 of them all, let's do them all in my next meeting or something, you know?
I didn't see you do that at all.
Don and I, prior to the meeting, talk about those priorities. Try to do a combination of sharing information, take away, and working on things. And, the worksheet would help us. For that, to help the board.
Right, and if materials aren't ready, there's no sense in talking about that, so we can reshuffle the meeting priorities based on that.
And then we did that tonight,
Yeah,
we had this.
Yep.
There was no discussion on it, we'll make sure you had it,
right,
same way with this one.
yep,
We made a good decision about when. So, yeah, I hope that's working. And the other concern Don has had is putting too much information out there and stresses the wrong word, but repeating what it is we're trying to do.
right,
And your idea will work with you.
Mm,
yeah, just something simple, as these are priority lists and just.
What's status of them?
Yeah,
Okay, very good. Any other business, Brett,
No, sir.
Don?
No,
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
And James? I'll let him have over to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I have a second. Bunch of them. All in favor?
everyone,
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much, folks.
you all.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.